I am an investigator with the U.S. Attorney's Office. You lie, you hurt people, you go down.
You ever prosecute a company as big as Purdue Pharma?
From Netflix to Hulu,
People all across this great nation are in pain.
you'll find big-name actors and actresses starring in shows centered around the topic of America's opioid crisis.
And we have the cure. This new miracle drug, OxyContin.
I'm Angela Kennecke. This is Grieving Out Loud. Sadly, hundreds of thousands of parents know how realistic these shows can be. Sandra Martinez's daughter was prescribed opioids for a health condition, but what seemed innocent at the time led her daughter down a dark road that could have been straight out of a horror movie.
Know that there was human trafficking involved because we have some human trafficking issues in our city. I know that she was drug muled. I know there were gangs that they abuse these girls that are out on the street seeking drugs because of their addiction.
Join us for this emotional and candid conversation as Sandra not only bravely shares her daughter's story, but also has valuable advice for other parents and reflects on the warning signs she may have missed.
When you mix pain with emotional hurt and addiction together, you have all those things. It makes for a catastrophic situation.
Sandra, welcome to Grieving Out Loud. I am so grateful to meet you, but as I always say to parents that I meet on this podcast where we've both lost children like this in this manner, I am so sorry that we're meeting under the circumstances of both of our daughters dying from fentanyl poisoning.
Thank you for having me. I greatly appreciate being able to speak on my daughter's behalf.
So let's start from the beginning. You are a naturopath, a natural medicine doctor. Can you explain to people what that is?
Yeah, so naturopath is mind, body, spirit. So we deal with the emotional components of the body, the spiritual aspect, building up someone's faith, and also the holistic side, which is alternative medicine, herbs, whole food, non-traditional therapies, things that if you go to a traditional doctor and you don't want to take a prescription, you would typically see a naturopath. So we deal with healing the root cause of a person's illness.
And how long have you been practicing this?
Oh gosh, about 15 years.
And you also are a mother to 5 kids?
Yes, I've raised 5 children. My oldest is 35 and my youngest is 22.
And we're talking now today about your daughter, Qarinna, right? So can you take me back in time and tell me a little bit about Qarinna and, what she was like as a kid? You were pretty busy raising
Yeah.
5 children.
So Qarinna was that true mother heart. She was like having a second adult mother around helping raise her younger siblings, very nurturing, very outgoing. She would just kind of pick up where I had to continue working. She would do that. She wasn't afraid of getting into the depths of being that nurturer in the home. She also struggled a little bit with learning, like, for instance, had some reading issues. And I think that set the standards for not feeling as confident in herself. And that led to other issues growing up.
Some insecurities or some of the ways she saw herself?
I think so. And that insecurities, you tend to draw yourself to friends or boyfriends that aren't at that stature that we would want as they grow up. Somebody that can instill good values. They typically it's people that if they struggle, you struggle, you kind of commingle with kind of commiserating.
Despite her struggles, Qarinna held on to some big dreams. She had her heart set on a career in law enforcement, but above all, her main goal was to be a loving, caring mom. How old was she when she had her kids?
The first one that she lost, she was 21 at about 7 months pregnant. And then she had her oldest daughter at 22. and then had her youngest daughter when she was about 25.
So 2 living children she had.
Yes.
Yeah. Pretty young mom.
Yes, she was a very young mom. She did exactly what I did. I had my children young, and she kind of followed in my footsteps, and she was a fun mom. Her girls always say, "Mom is the best mom ever." You know, if they wanted to ride bikes, she would ride bikes. So whatever they want to do, even play makeup, she would be the model for them, and they would just slap makeup all over her face, and she would just love to play house with them, and just very hands-on, happy mom.
But during Qarinna's 3rd pregnancy, she began suffering from troubling health systems. At first, doctors thought she may have GERD, but eventually she was diagnosed with pyloric spasms and gastrophoresis, a disorder that slows or stops the movement of food from your stomach to your small intestine.
They wanted to take the baby early because she was vomiting all day, every day. They did take her about 2 weeks early. 2 weeks after that, they brought her into surgery, did extensive tube tying. They knew she never could have children again. Went and did Botox in her stomach, which helped the spasms. Did the gallbladder surgery, removed that, thinking that would stop the bile buildup. That didn't help.
Oh, it sounds awful. Like it sounds like she was really suffering.
Yes. So she would vomit all day long, sometimes a lot of blood she would vomit. Her iron levels were incredibly low. The pain that she had was like a level 10 plus. When I would see her report and it was just a bleeding stomach, I knew she was in horrendous pain and it was just overwhelming.
Were you caring for her children then during all of this time too? Because I would imagine she wasn't able to care for her kids.
So that's a catch 22 because with all the vomiting and the blood loss, her iron was really low to a dangerous level. So she would be so exhausted. She would come over days on end and just rest. But she was such a great hands on mom that no matter how much she was sick, she would go and be sick and then come lay on the couch or lay on the floor next to them and basically suffer in her agony while taking care of them. And I would pinch in. I would kind of tag team when she just couldn't really do it.
To deal with her pain, Sandra says doctors prescribed her daughter several different types of opioids.
The pain was so bad. They gave her fentanyl lidocaine patches to wear over her right shoulder because when you get that kind of pain in your stomach, it affects your spleen. So it sends that pain up to the right shoulder. So those pain patches were only supposed to be used like once or twice a day. She would use 2 a few times during the day because the pain was so bad.
When doctors stopped prescribing opioids to Qarinna, Sandra says her daughter first resorted to visiting emergency rooms to try to manage her pain.
I knew they gave her morphine drips. I know they gave her the strongest drugs you can imagine they gave to her. She had, on a whim, constant Norcos, Percocet, all those things that were for muscle relaxers or pain meds. That's what she was given.
Unfortunately, Qarinna's story is painfully familiar. Following the FDA's approval of OxyContin, doctors nationwide began overprescribing the opioid. In a previous episode of Grieving Out Loud, we had a conversation with Dan Schneider, the focal figure in the Netflix docuseries The Pharmacist. Schneider went to great lengths to uncover the widespread corruption fueling the opioid crisis and advocate for reform following the tragic loss of his own son.
And I'm sad to say this again. I would have probably been like most pharmacists. And I would have probably looked the other way when I started seeing that. That's what 99% of the pharmacists did back then. And there's some guilt shared there. Had I not lost my son and been through the trauma and been so committed to try to prevent these tragedies, had that not happened, I would not have gotten involved and put doctors out of business.
You can listen to the two-part pharmacist episodes on Grieving Out Loud by checking out the show notes of this podcast. While you're there, please take a moment to rate and review this show. It helps our mission to increase awareness about the fentanyl epidemic, substance use disorder, and hopefully reach more people with the help they need before it's too late. Did she ever talk about how these medications affected her, or was she worried about it, or what did you get from her about all of these prescription opioids she was on?
Looking at this now after the fact, what I really see is that when you mix pain with emotional hurt and addiction together, you have all those things. It makes for a catastrophic situation. So I believe that she was still wounded by the loss of her son. I believe when the illness came in, they couldn't handle it and they gave her these meds. I think that the meds numbed the pain of both areas, the emotional and the physical.
Did she ever try to stop taking the painkillers? Or wasn't she not able to do that?
She tried when she went to go see the doctor that suggested to drink lemon water and pineapple fruit to get in papaya. And that's what I was telling her as well, to build up the enzymes. She tried. It was so painful. She just cried. She just cried. And she just kept telling me, Mom, I can't live with this pain until I'm 30. It's so horrendous.
Mm. And do you know what made her turn to the streets for her drugs, for her painkillers?
Yes. So when she had 3 bouts of going to the local hospitals that give you 10 pain pills, 10 pain pills would get her maybe 2 days, maybe 3 days max. So then you have to go to the next urgent care, the next hospital, and you don't get enough to sustain you for the month. The pain management clinic was about 45 to 50 miles away, and she would have to go every day. So there was no way that she could make it there being as sick as she was with the girl and getting to that place of care. So I think meeting someone on the street when she went to one of the clinics or had gone somewhere, they suggested, well, one of the pills you're taking is a sister to morphine. So why don't you just try a little bit of heroin? Because the heroin is $10. It'll get you 4 days worth of pain meds and you can smoke it, you can inject it. They gave her all these different ways to ingest. And it's only $10 for 4 days and it'll cover all your pain. And that's how she was introduced
What year would that have been?
in roughly 2018 sometime.
And did you know that this was happening? Did you know that?
No, I just thought it was the pain pills that she was still using. I never knew that heroin was ever introduced.
When did you find out?
Actually, I found out after we had to call and do a well check on her. And she was living with me, but she went missing for about 2 weeks, her and the girls. And I was very concerned. I didn't know where she was. She was with some friends. I found out where she was and I wanted to make sure she was okay. So I called the police and did a well check. They went to check on her. They brought a social worker with her. They did a drug test and found these things in her test.
And what did you think when you found this out?
I was so shocked because we all say, not our child. Never. I mean, heroin was always the worst drug I could ever imagine anybody using. And I could not believe that my child that was raised in a godly home, that had all the morals, that was a loving mother, a great mother, that she had her wits about her and she knew she never wanted to be in addiction, that she would ever try that.
So what happened next after this? After you find this out and, she was missing for a couple of weeks. I mean, things must have started to go very wrong.
Yeah, it went very wrong. I made the executive decision to hire a guardianship team to help me get guardianship of my grandbabies, my husband and I. We went ahead and pursued the paperwork. When she was forced to come home, she then was under the guidance of the social worker to do her tests, to keep doing the positive test to prove that she was an adequate mother. She did. She did the tests. Some she passed, one she didn't. It only takes one bad test for them to determine you're not a fit parent. And they had came to my house, a female social worker, and said, you have a decision to make. You either choose your daughter or you choose your grandchildren. But I either take the children today or she has to leave. So I had to make that decision, and it was a horrific decision. How do you send your young daughter out into the street with no means, and yet she needs the help, and yet you don't give your children up because really, honestly, actually trust CPS. There's just so many things that were wrong with that, but I had to make the decision to choose my grandchildren because they were innocent in all of it. And I just figured that at the moment I would choose them and the lady would leave, and then I would somehow miraculously get my daughter in to the treatment that she wanted. But my daughter was so hurt by that when she walked away, she said, I don't know what's going to happen to me now.
That sounds awful. That just sounds like the worst situation you could be put in.
Yes.
And so you took the grandchildren, and what happened to your daughter after that?
So my daughter was in and out of the home. When she came, we would do a bag check to make sure that she didn't have anything on her. We got her into two detox facilities. In between that, she would stay with friends. She would meet people and stay with them, or people would just offer a place for her to stay. But in between the detox facilities, one didn't do anything. The other one was extensive treatment that could help the stomach and her addiction, which it was a wonderful treatment in the beginning. But she felt great on the 6th day. She thought she could overcome this. And so she left the facility on the 6th day. And then from that, they wanted to send her to long distance treatment. So that long distance treatment would have been about 3 hours away. Well, she was now then choleric. She could understand. She wanted to be by her girl. She knew that there were detox facilities in our city, and she did not want to be far from her girls. But they were not willing to put her somewhere close by her girls. And typically that's what happens. You need moral support. And to see her girls would have been a wonderful thing to keep her going. But they said no, they wouldn't do that. So she ended up going back into the old ways. And of course, old ways, stronger drugs, more addiction. A lot of horrific things happened to her. I know that there was human trafficking involved because we have some human trafficking issues in our city. I know that she was drug muled. I know there were gangs that they abuse these girls that are out on the street seeking drugs because of their addiction. So many scary things that happened. And I mean, I would get phone calls or messages daily of things that were being seen.
From her. She was telling you?
Not from her, from other people, because I was always looking for her. I was always trying to get her help. And we were trying to rescue her essentially all the time. And so she made a comment to one of her friends. I don't know how come is always one step behind me, but she always knows where I am. I think I just had favor on social media, and I would put her picture out there and someone would message me and say, I just saw her at this place or that place, and I would go looking, or my husband would go looking.
It sounds like a terrible way for her to live and for you to live as well.
Yes.
It just sounds like an awful, awful time.
Yes, it was an extreme nightmare.
So how long did this go on with her being homeless, basically?
Yeah, about a year and a half.
And then what happened?
So things got worse. She got involved with a group of people that were very dangerous. And at one point, she was given a dirty needle injection in her forearm. It was left in an abandoned house. She was found. We got her to the emergency room. She had a severe infection, a blood infection. It created like a golf ball sized mass on her right hand. and it swelled her whole arm all the way up to her shoulder. They said that she almost died of staph. I believe that was her wake up call to really get help. So she sought to get help with one of the first addiction places she went into. She submitted a letter. It had to be a whole 12 months before she could submit the letter. She was able to go into the facility because I begged and begged, and I had to talk to everybody from people in Sacramento. I had to pull a lot of strings to get her in this last time because they did not want to take her in. She got in. She was there for 3 days, pretty much slept the whole 3 days because she was on the 4th day of detox and she was losing her bodily fluids. So she slept for about 3 days. On the 3rd day, she got up, I guess, to take a shower and took all the clothing that she had on that she entered the facility in. She had a needle, which they call a rig, a hypodermic needle, hidden in the back of her undergarment. When she went to take the shower, she just took her belongings off, got in the shower, and then got back in bed. A nurse heard the running water, came into her room, saw her undergarments with the needle shoved in her undergarment, and they proceeded to wake her up at 3:40 in the morning. I call that waking the sleeping giant. Heavy duty withdrawal. They were giving her heavy duty meds in there. Well, they wanted to do a strip search. They wanted to strip the room down. They wanted to check everything. Well, she didn't want to be there. She said, "Give me my things. I'm leaving." And they proceeded to tell her she had to go. So she said, "I want to go." Not thinking in her right mind. So she goes down to the lobby, realizes that was a bad decision, that she should have just let them look through the room. She had nothing to hide. She didn't have anything with her. They take everything from you. But she was angry. And once she got down to the lobby, she called back up and they said she couldn't come back up, that she had to see her therapist. And the therapist didn't come in until 8:30 in the morning. By that time, they believed she had been out too long and never took her back in. So that was, in her mind, her last ditch effort. She lost all hope, all hope. Nobody else had ever helped her. This was the only place, and that her treatment was horrific. So from there, it was 3 weeks of a severe downward spiral.
3 weeks after she left treatment, Qarinna stopped by her mom's house. While Sandra was relieved to see her daughter, she was shocked and startled by her appearance.
She was very thin. It was the summer, so she had been sunburnt from being out in the element. Her feet were really swollen from walking, just looked like someone who hadn't eaten in a while. I caught her on my Ring camera walking up to eat kumquats in the middle of the night because she was hungry. Before that, I would just leave bags of food out there and blanket as a just in case.
Were her stomach issues still a problem for her? I mean, could she eat? Was that still an issue?
During the addiction journey, she was still vomiting, still having problems, but I don't think the pain level was what it was because she was so numb for the drugs. But what happened from injecting heroin, her veins were destroyed. So she had to start, they call it muscle stabbing, where you stick the needles and you jab your shoulder muscle to get it into the muscle or it gets into the bloodstream. So both her shoulders had scars from muscle stabbing on her shoulders. So what had happened then is 3 weeks after that last detox, she had met up with a woman I know, a street ministry woman, and she was able to talk with her. My daughter said she needed prayer. She was asking for some sort of help. She gave her some supplies, and she saw that she was with a gentleman from the area that is not a good guy. And moving forward to the June 26th, when she came to my house, she was with one of the gentlemen and she asked for $20. My daughter never asked for money. So we thought something was wrong. She never asked for money. just would come for food or a shower. I told her we weren't going to give her the money, and I told her never to bring somebody to our home. It wasn't safe. We don't know who these people are. And the next morning, she texted me at 10:15 while I was working, wanted to get her insurance card. She wanted to try detox again. She knew I was serious. She knew that I had drawn the line in the sand. And I said, no more. You can't come back here anymore. Because, see, this is what I was told. I was told by people that are psychologists or therapists, give them tough love. You cannot let them into your home. They have to hit rock bottom. So I listened to everybody and what they said because I didn't know any better.
Well, I think you're not alone. So many parents, and I did this myself with Emily when she was a teenager, was that tough love, trying to be tough and don't let them take advantage of you and set those boundaries. And quite frankly, it didn't work.
No, it didn't work. And I didn't hear from her for 3 months. And that's where the journey went, where I was following every lead. I was going to all these homeless encampments. I was going to anywhere that I thought she had been. And I just couldn't find her. And it just all seemed so surreal. I was having nightmares.
Unfortunately, the story just gets worse. 3 months later, Sandra received a heart-wrenching call from authorities saying they had found a body that matched her daughter's description.
And that they had her body for 3 months. And I didn't believe it because I was on that goose chase listening to everyone when they said they seen her.
And she had been dead the whole time.
She had been gone for 3 months. Yes.
When did she die? When did they think that she died?
There was an accident. They were on the scene when she died. She was given a lethal dose of fentanyl. We know that. I didn't know all the other mixtures that were in it. And then she was struck by a train because she was just not in her right mind. There was a witness that had seen her on the 28th at 3 p.m. sitting on the metal railroad rack, whatever you call it, and her head was slumped over between her knees. And typically they say that's when people who are given fentanyl, they die because their oxygen cuts out. But the female came up to my daughter and she continuously tried to get her to move and get up and get off the truck. However, she said my daughter was so out of it that she just looked through her. She was in such a haze. When the train conductor turned the corner a mile away from her, he saw her on the track, started honking. She was walking right in the middle of the track. He said that she was walking very calmly. A bag was open and she had a flat iron in her other hand and a jacket. When he got really close and he slammed on the brakes, she looked over her right shoulder, saw it was coming, and stumbled to get off the track and got off of it, but she didn't make it far enough. So they called it being clipped.
You found out about this 3 months after her death.
3 months after. Yes.
You have been looking for her this whole time.
Yeah.
Everything about her story is just so sad, Sandra. Everything you told me about, her medical issues, how her addiction started, how she lived for those final years. Everything about it just makes me want to cry.
Yeah. It really got me too for a long time. And I'm a strong believer and I didn't understand how this happened, constantly praying and, believing that God would rescue her and heal her just like he's done with other people. And I didn't understand the policing behind it. I had 6 missing persons reports. How did they not identify her? Number one, I found out fingerprints don't count because you have to have a record and she never got in trouble. So she didn't have a record to identify her. She had no tattoos. I gave them all the identifiers, but they never could pinpoint who she was. So when they let her sit there for 3 months, my heart just broke because I thought, here's my child going back to when she was young, not thinking she was good enough because she wasn't smart enough. In a mother's mind, all I think is my baby girl thinks I abandoned her and left her in a morgue to rot because I didn't come rescue her. That's how my mind went.
Have you lost a loved one to overdose or fentanyl poisoning? I'd like to invite you to share their story on our new Emily's Hope Memorial website called More Than Just a Number. They were our children, siblings, cousins, husbands, wives, aunts, uncles, and friends. So much more than just a number. You can submit a memorial today on morethanjustanumber.org. Sandra says if it weren't for her faith, she never would have survived. How did you keep your faith? Because like you said, you were waiting for her to be rescued. You were waiting for a miracle to happen. I think all of us parents who've been through something maybe not as bad as what you've been through, what your daughter went through, but we all think going to get this miracle, especially if we pray hard enough and if we try to always do the right thing. And so how have you been able to maintain your faith?
Well, to some people, it might sound crazy, but the word of God talks about the gifts that people have. And some people have discernment. Some people have sight. They have visions. They have those supernatural gifts, right? And, from the moment I got the word from the coroner, I came to my office and screamed at God. And I just said, I can't believe this is the God I serve. I can't believe that this happened to my daughter. Where were you? And I said, I need to know what happened that day. And my visions of what anything I saw in the past didn't compare to what I was about to see. I saw the train tracks. The Lord let me see what happened that moment. And I saw the train tracks. I saw him walking towards her. And his long white robe would just go up and over each track. He didn't look at the train that was coming. He didn't focus. His vision was solely on her. And when he got up to her, I saw him pick her up like a bride. And I heard him say, I rescued her before there was ever an impact. She felt nothing. So that started my journey of asking him more. I started tracking back to 3 days after she was killed. I had a white ladybug land on my leg. And I thought it was a tick because I had never seen a white ladybug. And when I looked at it, it had 2 black hearts on it. Then I had a white dove land in my backyard, a giant white dove land in my backyard days before her service. And it had 2 hearts on its chest. So I kept seeing hearts. And it was like the Lord was constantly telling me, I know your heart is broken, but trust me, I rescued her.
In the midst of grappling with her own grief, Sandra is one of the millions of grandparents stepping up to raise grandchildren because of the fentanyl crisis. How is that going for you? And how are her children?
So they've been in counseling. They don't get any financial support from the state because my daughter didn't work long enough. So we are solely supporting them. They don't get any death benefits. They don't get anything. So we provide for them 100%. Because we're faith-based family, I think they're handling it the best they can. It's hard because I'm fighting the war on fentanyl, finding out that she was given 14,800 milligrams of fentanyl, carfentanil, norfentanil, meth. Knowing that this was out there and this is the world that her girls live in, I feel like I need to be an advocate while protecting them. I'm very cautious now with them on where they go. They don't trick or treat. They don't touch things. I have Narcan in my purse. They don't know the gravity of their mother's accident. They just know there was accident. They hear a lot about fentanyl because we have pictures with her when I go to events. They know it's bad. I'm teaching them about not taking candy or anything from anyone, not trusting people. They very much are on a journey of being aware at such a young age of being told that fentanyl is being taken on America.
Does that bring you some comfort having your granddaughters with you?
Yes, it does. It's kind of a bittersweet though, because they're so much like her. So it's nice that we have a piece of her, but it also feels very sad because I want to hug her and I see their antics or things about them that are exactly like her. Kind of is a chance to do a do-over, but it's just in a sad way.
Yeah. Well, you were certainly not alone with taking on that job. Nobody thinks they're going to be raising young children after their own children are all grown up and out of the house. But I so appreciate you sharing Qarinna's story with us. And thank you for all the work you're doing to help raise awareness and for caring for her children.
Thank you. I appreciate the time.
Thank you so much for spending your time with us to learn more about one of our nation's top killers, fentanyl. If you or a loved one are struggling with substance use disorder, we have resources for help on our website, emily'shope.charity. Thanks again for listening. Until next time, wishing you faith, hope, and courage. This podcast is produced by Casey Wannenberg King and Anna Phi.